The sound still echoes in my mind. Two small voices calling my name, then the water swallowing them whole. They said it was an accident, that kids just wandered too far. But when I saw my uncle's son smiling at the funeral, I knew the lake didn't take them. Someone did. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. That morning was colder than usual, yet the air felt heavier than winter. I stood at the lake's edge, watching fog crawl across the surface like it was trying to hide the truth. My hands shook as I gripped two tiny sneakers, blue, waterlogged, one still tied, the other torn apart. My twins, Ethan and Caleb, were 6 years old. Both gone. The sheriff called it a tragic accident, but nothing about it felt like an accident. Behind me stood my uncle Victor, tall, hardened, the kind of man who'd rather fix tractors than comfort people. His 5 grown sons stood beside him, pretending to search the lake for hours. They dragged sticks through the mud, kicked rocks, talked quietly among themselves. Not one tear, not one word of sympathy. When the divers pulled the bodies out, Victor told me not to look. "They've been through enough," he said. But I saw. God help me, I saw. Their small hands looked scraped, like they tried to claw their way up. Their faces were peaceful, but their eyes, even closed, felt full of fear. The sheriff ruled it accidental drowning. Said no signs of struggle, no foul play. Closed the file before the week even ended. The same sheriff who hunted and fished with Victor every weekend. My wife, Brooke, sat on the porch every night after, staring at the same lake. She barely spoke anymore, just rocked in that old wooden chair while her eyes stayed lost somewhere far away. I wanted to ask what she was thinking, but her silence scared me. She didn't cry. A mother who'd just lost both sons didn't even cry. 3 days after the funeral, Victor and his sons threw a barbecue at their cabin, just next to the lake. I saw the bonfire from our porch, heard their laughter echoing through the woods. The sound made my jaw lock. You don't laugh by the fire where 2 children died, unless you have a reason to. I told Brooke I was going out for air. She didn't look up from her chair. I walked through the woods, quiet as a breath, until the firelight stretched across the trees. The closer I got, the more clearly I heard it. Voices, mocking tones. "Guess they didn't float like we planned," one said, and the others laughed until their drinks spilled. "Should have taught them to swim better," another shouted. Victor wasn't there. Just his 5 sons, Dominic, Ryder, Preston, Grant, and Kyle. My blood went cold. The same boys who carried my sons' caskets were now reenacting how they died, pretending to drown each other, laughing, slapping water from the cooler on each other's shirts. Every muscle in me wanted to storm out and make them feel what I felt, but grief chained me to the shadows. I knew if I made one move there, they'd twist it. They'd say I was mad. When I got home, Brooke was still sitting outside. "You hear them?" I asked quietly. She nodded once. Eyes still empty. "They're just boys, Logan," she whispered. "They're grieving differently." I clenched my jaw. Differently? They're celebrating. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Guilt or something close to fear flashed across her face. The next morning, Victor came to see me. Said the boys didn't mean any harm. Told me to stop snooping around, stop accusing family. "Sometimes grief makes a man crazy," he said. "Don't let it ruin what's left of yours." I wanted to punch him, but I just watched his truck drive away, mud spinning under his tires. That afternoon, I found something that froze me to the bone. The sheriff had returned our belongings from the lake. The twins' clothes, their small backpack, and one charm bracelet. Except there were 2 bracelets. The second one wasn't theirs. The initials carved inside said PH, Preston's initials, Victor's second son. I felt the ground tilt. That wasn't lost evidence, it was proof. The twins weren't alone down there. That night, I went through Brooke's drawers while she slept, desperate for anything that connected her to what happened. That's when I found her phone hidden under a pile of scarves. Locked, but I guessed the code, our wedding date. The screen lit up, and my heartbeat stopped. A message thread with Dominic, Victor's eldest. The last text was sent the night before the drowning. "Dominic, Make sure you stay home tomorrow. Don't come early. We'll handle it. And then, right after my kids vanished, Dominic, it's done. Don't text me again. My stomach twisted. My skin went numb. My wife, my children's mother, had been talking to the same man whose brothers laughed over their deaths. I looked over at her sleeping face. She looked peaceful, almost innocent, like nothing inside her could hurt anyone. But I remembered the fog, the sticks scraping the lake, the laughter. And I realized, evil doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it looks like calm. The next morning, Victor's sons acted strange. They didn't go near the lake. They avoided my eyes when we passed in town. Dominic was away for business, Victor claimed, but the lie was shaky. People in a small town hear whispers before the truth arrives. I started keeping a small notebook. Every detail, every inconsistency. How Kyle's jeans were still wet 2 days after the accident. How Ryder's truck had new scratches near the tailgate. How Grant stopped wearing his watch, the same one I saw gleaming near the shore that day. Days turned into weeks. No one spoke about the twins anymore except me. The town moved on. Brooke barely talked, but one night she said something in her sleep that made my heart stop. She whispered, "Don't tell him, Dominic," then went still again. I couldn't breathe. Every night after, I sat outside, staring at that lake, waiting for any sign that the world still had justice. But silence answered back. Until one morning, I woke to a loud bang against the door. When I opened it, a small wooden box sat on the porch, dripping wet. Inside were 2 toy cars, my twins' favorites, identical except for a new addition. Both were cracked in half. Tape underneath read, "They should have known how to float." I staggered back, while burning my throat. Brooke came outside, looked at the box, and her hands trembled so violently she dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the porch. She didn't say a word. She just stared at the lake. I stepped closer to her. "Tell me what happened, Brooke." Her lips quivered. "Stop," she said weakly. "You don't know what you're asking for." "I already lost everything," I whispered. "The only thing left is the truth." She turned and walked inside without a word. But that night, I saw her on the phone through the window, whispering, pacing, crying. She kept saying one name, Dominic. So it wasn't just betrayal, it was personal, deep, planned. The next morning, I called Victor, told him I needed to talk. He laughed and said, "Let it rest, Logan. God's already punished enough." I answered, "Not yet, he hasn't." Then hung up. Later, I went down to the lake again, not to mourn this time, but to remember every detail. The broken branches near the east side. The trampled grass where small feet once ran. And one thing no one else noticed. 2 small handprints in the mud, hardened by sun, knuckles scraped, fingers stretched toward shore, frozen in their last reach for life. That night, as fog rolled across the water again, I thought I heard voices, faint, fragile, calling. Maybe grief tricks the ears, or maybe the lake still carries echoes. Either way, something inside me decided then. I'd find the truth, even if it meant drowning in it. Because accidents don't leave laughter behind. And innocence doesn't hide messages marked it's done. The morning after the toy box appeared, I didn't sleep. I just sat outside watching the fog climb off the lake again. The same gray breath rising like ghosts trying to speak. Brooke avoided me completely, like my presence burned. Her silence wasn't grief anymore, it was fear. I went into town to get groceries, but everywhere I went, eyes followed. The conversation stopped when I stepped in. The twins' death had become family gossip now, the town divided in whispers. Half believed the accident story, the other half thought I'd lost my mind. I didn't care which side they were on. That lake knew the truth. So did the people who smiled near it. By evening, I drove past Victor's property. Smoke again. Another bonfire. It wasn't grief gatherings anymore. It was ritual. 5 suns and loud music, bottles clanking, laughter echoing across the woods like they weren't mourning, but bragging. I parked far down an old dirt path and watched them from the treeling. The fire glowed red against their faces, faces that looked far too calm for murderers. Dominic stood at the center, leading them like a general leading a toast. He raised his beer and said something I couldn't hear. When he finished, they all shouted and poured their drinks into the fire. Then Ryder tossed something into the flame. A small piece of fabric, blue, burnt edges curling. My stomach twisted. I didn't need closer vision to know that color. It was from Ethan's favorite blanket. The firelight flickered across Dominic's grin. The way he stood there, proud, untouchable, made my hands curl into fists. They weren't just mocking death, they were celebrating it. Like killing my sons gave them some unholy sense of victory. I felt something shift inside me that night. Not rage, not grief, but a stillness colder than the water they drowned in. Justice wasn't coming through the law. Not here. Not with men protected by bloodlines and handshakes. This had to come from deeper hands, truth itself. I slipped back to my truck before they noticed. When I turned the engine, headlights cut across Victor's porch, and somehow, Brooke was standing there, wrapped in her robe, motionless, eyes wide, looking right at me from the shadows of their cabin porch. I froze. What was she doing there? The drive home was a blur. My phone buzzed twice, both messages anonymous. Stop digging or you'll join them. When I reached home, Brooke was already inside. The porch light was on, the chair still rocking. She'd beaten me there somehow. You went out? I asked. Her hands trembled as she poured whiskey into a glass. Can you just stop, Logan? I didn't answer. I just watched her hand. Small tremors, dark under the nails like dried dirt or smoke. My throat dried up. That lake wasn't done taking things yet. I spent the next day digging up every old picture, every birthday video, hoping for clues in faces, gestures, anything to make sense of how family could turn into monsters. That night, at 3 a.m., I heard trucks pulling up outside again. I looked through the curtains. The same 5 stood near the mailbox, cigarettes glowing like small devils in the darkness. Dominic stepped closer to the porch, saying something to the others. Grant bent down and left something at the post. Then they drove off laughing. I waited till dawn, then went out. There it was again, another wooden box, this time with mud markings all over it. Inside, a Polaroid photo. The lake, moonlight reflecting off its surface, and writing scrawled below it. They float when called. I didn't bring that box inside. I buried it right where I found it. Later that same day, Victor came by pretending to check on Brooke. I worry about you too, he said. Grief makes a man see ghosts where there are none. I looked him dead in the eye. You raise demons, not sons. His jaw tightened, but he smiled anyway. That kind of smile that knows it'll never face a consequence. Careful, son, he said softly. Words have weight in small towns. Not as heavy as guilt, I replied. That night, Brooke packed a bag. She said she needed space, that being near the lake made her sick. I didn't stop her. I just watched her drive away into the fog. Maybe that's what she wanted all along. Alone, I could think clearer. The lake had its man now, and its silence spoke louder. A week passed. Then, one by one, Victor's sons started leaving town too. Or so people said, but I still saw them. Always near the woods, near the water. Like they couldn't let go of what they'd done. Or maybe they feared what was coming. One rainy afternoon, I went back to the lake with a recorder in my pocket. I needed proof. No one would believe me otherwise. I found the old boat half sunk where they used to fish. Inside it, cans, rags, empty bottles, and a small charm bracelet. The second one, my twins. Its silver chain was broken clean, but both engraved initials were still visible. They'd been here before. Recently, as I stepped out, my foot hit something in the mud, a small metal object, half buried. When I wiped the dirt off, my chest tightened. It was a lighter, Dominic's name carved on its side. Thunder rolled across the lake, heavy and low. The wind scattered the tall grass in waves, and for a heartbeat, it sounded like whispering, soft, layered voices carried by water. I recorded it, but halfway through, the recorder cut off. Battery full. Screen still on. But the audio stopped dead at the exact second my own name echoed back. I walked home under rain that night feeling like eyes were on me from every side. 2 days later, the town was buzzing again about a fight at the local bar. Dominic and Ryder apparently got drunk and started swinging at each other, shouting something about the lake taking sides. Nobody knew what it meant, but the following morning, only one of them was seen again. Ryder. Dominic was gone. Victor told the sheriff he went to the city for work. But Ryder's face said something else. Pale, tight, haunted. Like the ghosts of guilt were dragging behind his eyes. Even Brooke called me from wherever she went, voice shaking. Logan, she whispered, something's happening. Don't go near the water. Then the line cut. By nightfall, I was already walking the path to the shore. I didn't care about warnings. The moon lit the water like glass, and something beneath the surface flickered faintly. Not bubbles, not light. Movement, as if the lake breathed. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw figures through the fog. 4 men. No, maybe 3, hard to tell through the distance. They stood in a rough circle, staring down into the water. One suddenly grabbed his head and screamed. The others pulled him back, shouting. Then they ran. Fast. Tires squealed on the dirt road seconds later. When the fog cleared, ripples spread from that same spot they'd been standing. And floating there, just barely breaking the surface, was the same toy car split in half, spinning slowly like the water was cradling memory. Not long after, word spread that one of Victor's sons had disappeared. No one found him. No body, no trace. Just his truck, parked by the woods. Brooke came home briefly a few days later. She looked older somehow, her eyes hollow, skin gray beneath the sleepless nights. What's happening, Brooke? I asked. She whispered, it started, then shut herself in the bathroom, sobbing quietly until dawn. Something had shifted. The celebration was over. Regret had begun. At work, I overheard people talking about me again, calling me Delta Dad, like some ghostly rumor spreading through town folklore. They said they'd seen me near the water at night whispering to it, calling for the dead. I didn't bother denying it anymore. Let them think whatever they wanted. The truth already had its own current. Late one night, I walked past Victor's house. No music this time. No bonfire. Just silence. And his remaining sons huddled close together, talking in whispers near the porch. I caught only one phrase through the trees. He's not stopping. The lake knows. As I stood there listening, something broke the surface of the water behind them. Not loud, not violent, but enough to make every man freeze in place and turn around slowly. I couldn't see what it was from where I hid, only the way Victor's flashlight trembled in his hand. Then a scream. High, short, cut off halfway. By the time dawn reached the edge of the lake, one more body was missing. The morning after the second disappearance, the entire town moved like it was holding its breath. No one said Victor's sons were dead, but everyone whispered it. The sheriff set up tape along the lake again, pretending it was an investigation, though everybody knew it was for show. The water was calm, but it carried something cold underneath, a kind of waiting. I watched from my porch while the flashing lights danced across the trees. Brooke sat at the table behind me, staring at nothing. She hadn't eaten in days. When the sheriff came to ask questions, she avoided eye contact, her shoulders tightening each time his name, Dominic, came up. After he left, she finally spoke. They're saying someone's doing this. To them. Like payback. I turned. You think I'd kill them? Her voice cracked, but didn't rise. No, but I think the lake wants to finish what it started. And it's using you. Those words stuck in my chest. I almost laughed, but not from humor. Because lately, every time I looked at that lake, it truly felt alive. That night's reflection didn't match the sky. When I moved, the water didn't ripple naturally. It pulsed, like it recognized me. Later that day, Victor came by again, anger seeping through every breath he took. You've cursed this house, he said. Ever since you buried them, nothing's been right. I stared at him across the porch. Nothing was right the day your sons dragged them to that water. His nostrils flared. You watch your mouth. You've got no proof. But I did. Inside, stacked in a neat pile. I had evidence they didn't know existed. The bracelet, Dominic's lighter, a photo with his truck near the lake on the night of the drowning, time-stamped by accident. Every tiny piece, quiet and patient, waiting. That night, Brooke's phone lit up again while she showered. I told myself not to look, but temptation grew heavier than conscience. The message preview made my stomach drop. Delete everything. He knows. Unknown number, but I recognized the writing style, Dominic's abrupt tone. Except Dominic was already gone. When Brooke came out, I asked, "Who's still texting you?" She froze mid-step, bathroom towel clutched in both hands. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me again," I said quietly. "Was it him?" She shook her head, but tears betrayed her. "They said if I warned you, they'd hurt my parents. It wasn't supposed to go this far." Her confession slid out half-whisper, half-weeping. Brooke admitted that months before the twins' deaths, she'd been seeing Dominic. She said he made her feel seen again after I stopped talking, after grief over the job loss and all. It began as flirting, turned into secrets. Dominic promised her money, escape, new life. But when she got pregnant again with our third, the one we lost in miscarriage, she told him she wanted to end things. Dominic's anger exploded. "You'll choose him again, like always." The next week, the twins drowned. She covered her face. "He told me if I kept quiet, he'd make it all disappear." I didn't believe him. Then they were gone. "You have to understand." I didn't want to hear more. The room shrank around us. The sound of water outside filled my ears again. Steady, calm, patient. "Victor knew?" I asked. Her eyes, red and swollen, met mine. "He found out after. Covered for them. They said it was the only way to protect the family." Family. The word burned. All this time, that's what they clung to, blood over truth, lies over children. That same night, I drove to Victor's property. I didn't knock. He was in the barn, mending fence tools, pretending life stayed normal. "You'll regret this obsession," he said when I stepped in. "Your sons killed mine," I said, "and now they're dying the same way. Doesn't that worry you?" He sighed, looking older suddenly. "Boys make mistakes. But you're trying to play God." "God didn't drown them," I said. "You did. You and your silence." He slammed the tool onto the bench. "You think the town's gonna believe your crazy stories once they find out about your wife's affair? So that's how he wanted to play it. I destroy him, he destroys her." But I didn't respond. I just walked away as he shouted after me, voice cracking. "You can't fight blood, Logan. It protects itself." Rain poured that night, relentless. From my porch, I watched lightning shatter the dark, flashes illuminating the lake. Each strike seemed closer, striking almost rhythmically, as if marking something unseen beneath the surface. When thunder finally rolled away, I noticed something floating near shore. I grabbed a flashlight and ran down. It was a photograph, soaked, warped. My twins at their last birthday, smiling, and behind them, in the far background where woods meet the water, stood Dominic, half-hidden, watching. That photo had never been taken by me. The following days blurred into quiet chaos. Victor's eldest remaining sons stopped showing up to town jobs. Their trucks stayed parked. Their mother, Victor's wife, Eliza, went to church daily, muttering prayers about water cleansing blood. Even she knew something was unraveling beyond human reach. Brooke locked herself in the bedroom for hours, refusing to eat. Once, I caught her whispering near the open window, words too soft to catch. When I stepped closer, she jumped, slamming it shut. "I was praying," she said. But it didn't sound like prayer, it sounded like pleading. The town sheriff came again midweek. Claimed they found loose tire tracks near the west dock, matching one of my tires. "Getting some late-night air again, Logan?" he asked with that half-sarcastic grin that men in uniform wore when they already picked their side. "I was home," I replied. He smirked. "That's so? Someone's spreading stories about you talking to the lake at night." I leaned closer. "Maybe the lake's answering questions no one else will." He didn't stay long after that. That evening, Brooke finally came to me, quiet, trembling. They're planning something, she said. Victor and the others. They're saying they'll end this before the lake takes another. I asked, and how? She stared through me. They're coming for you. Thunder rumbled again as if echoing her words. But fear didn't feel heavy anymore. If anything, it felt clean, like all the lies around us were finally washing away. When the first headlights cut through the rain outside, I was already waiting by the window, lights off inside. Old hunting rifles, same ones Victor gave me years ago, hung on the wall like relics from a better life. I didn't reach for them. I wanted truth, not blood. But Victor didn't step out that night. Only 3 of his sons came, flashlights sweeping across my property, calling my name like it was a hunt. Every light beam hit the ground, then jerked toward the lake, confused. Something moved out there, rippling just beyond reach. Then one screamed. Sudden, sharp. The others shouted his name. Lights jerked violently across the water. Then 2 voices started yelling for help, tripping over wet grass, dropping lights, splashing. But the screams faded too quickly. The rain swallowed them. I stood frozen by the window, counting seconds between thunder and silence. When I finally stepped outside, fog already rolled back, and the only sound left was the lake, still. The next morning, the sheriff's car blocked the drive. He looked shaken this time. 3 more missing, he said. That's your uncle's boys. No signs of a struggle. Strange, huh? I didn't answer. He left after warning me to avoid the water. Inside, Brooke watched from the stairs, pale, trembling. What did you do? She whispered. Nothing, I said. And it was true. I hadn't lifted a hand. Later that night, I stood by the lake again. The surface reflected every shadow of cloud and tree branch. But just beneath the top layer, faint outlines drifted. 5 shapes, quiet, motionless, as if waiting for acknowledgement. Wind broke across the water, and the shapes vanished, drawn deeper again. Behind me, Brooke spoke softly, thin voice shredded by tears. They'll come for you next. I looked back and said, good. Maybe then I'll see my sons again. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a grave still waiting for the ground to close. Brooke barely spoke, and when she did, her voice came out thin, like a whisper that had lost faith in being heard. Every clock ticked louder, every creak sounded like a footstep, and the smell of the lake carried through every open window, whether we wanted it or not. Days bled together, each one quieter, heavier. Until the afternoon, I found Brooke burning papers in the kitchen sink. She was shaking, eyes glassed with panic. Ash curled in the air around her like gray snow. What are you doing? I asked. She froze, holding a folded sheet midair. I snatched it before she could toss it in. It was a letter. Not one she wrote, one addressed to her. Keep him calm. The insurance will pay out soon. Below it, a signature, Dominic. The words cut through my spine like something sharp and cold. I looked up at her. What is this? Her lips trembled. You weren't supposed to see that. You mean I wasn't supposed to find out that my son's lives were worth money to you? Her knees buckled, and she slid down the wall, sobbing into her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, she whispered. Dominic said it wouldn't go that far. He just wanted to scare you. I slammed my hand against the counter. Scare? You call drowning children scaring? She broke into shivers. I thought they'd just fake something, maybe stage a warning. Victor said the lake was deep enough that it'd look accidental. Her confession spilled out like poison from an open vein. They planned it. Every part of it. Dominic and Brooke had arranged a fake accident, so I could appear careless, lose control, and she could collect the children's policy through Victor's insurance ties. But something went wrong. The twins fought back, panicked, and the 5 cousins held them under too long. Brooke pressed her palms over her face, sobbing harder. When I found out, they said it was too late to fix it. They buried the truth before the funerals. I wanted to tell you, but Victor, he said you'd kill us all. I backed away from her slowly, the room spinning. All the nights, she sat quiet on the porch weren't grief, they were guilt. She reached out for me, desperate. Please, Logan. I made a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. But her words sounded hollow now, like memorized apologies that lost their weight years ago. I walked outside for air, but it didn't feel any cleaner. The rain had soaked the ground again, and mud clung to my boots with every step toward the lake. The water was still, black, mirror-like, but in its reflection, clouds twisted unnaturally slow. I thought about the letter's words again. Insurance will pay out soon. That's why they laughed. That's why the sheriff closed the case. All of them had something to gain. When I got back to the house, the phone was ringing. Unknown number. A voice I didn't know said, "You want it all, don't you? You want the truth." My heart pounded. Who is this? But the call cut, leaving only static that lasted 3 full seconds before silence. I grabbed my jacket and drove to town. The attorney Nathaniel still worked out of a small office behind the post office. My father's old friend, half retired, half forgotten. He listened while I told him everything. Every confession, every name. When I showed him the letter, he leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Victor's had his hands in the county's insurance for years. The sheriff owes him favors for campaign money. But if what you're saying about those boys is true, you'll need solid evidence. Paper trail, bank record, confession, something that breathes. He handed me an old recorder, the same kind he used in depositions. Get them talking. Don't push, just listen. People like Victor think they can talk their way around sins. That's when they slip. His hands shook as he gave it to me. Logan, whatever you do, don't go near that lake tonight. I've heard things. You let the truth surface, not drag you under. But I went anyway. Victor's truck was still by the barn when I got there. His horses made uneasy noises inside the stable. He stood outside with a lantern and a bottle, mud streaking the front of his coat. "You took enough from me," he said without turning around. "Now my boys are dropping one by one. You satisfied?" "Not yet," I said. He laughed, voice ragged. "You think this is me? You think I touched your kids?" "No, boy. I tried to stop them. They said it was for the money, for Brooke, for teaching you humility. You think I wanted this family damned." The recorder sat hidden in my pocket, every word catching. But before I could ask more, he looked up, and his gaze fixed on the lake behind me. "You brought it out," he whispered. "You made it follow us." I turned. The surface rippled once. Just once. Then stillness. When I faced him again, he was gone from where he stood. His lantern rolled in the mud, flame flickering low. He was kneeling by the edge, mumbling a prayer, voice breaking. "Lord, take it back." Then he screamed, as if something beneath the water had taken hold. I ran for him, grabbed his arm, but the force pulling him was stronger. He gasped once, eyes rolling back, and then the water swallowed him. No splash, just gone. I stumbled back, shaking, too stunned to breathe. Seconds later, bubbles broke the surface. Then the lantern's reflection, then another. 5 small shapes, drifting closer. They weren't bright. They weren't clear. But they floated near where he vanished, and sank one by one, like a final count being marked off. I didn't tell anyone about Victor that night. By dawn, his body surfaced near the dock. Same spot the twins were found. The sheriff said heart failure. Old man couldn't handle tragedy, he muttered. But in his eyes, there was no disbelief, only fear he couldn't admit. Brooke tried to leave the next morning, packed what little she had left, and said she'd try starting over. But when she reached the door, she froze. Her car sat by the drive, windows fogged from the inside. And there, pressed against the glass, 2 small handprints, one on each side, drawing into faint prints under the morning sun. She dropped her keys. I stepped beside her, barely whispering, "They're not done yet." That evening, I brought the recorder back to Nathaniel. We listened in silence to Victor's last words. When it ended, he exhaled lightly. "It's enough to reopen everything, if we live long enough to testify." He wasn't joking. That night, something started thumping from beneath our porch. Slow, wet, intermittent. I knelt down, shining a flashlight through the cracks. Saw nothing but damp earth, and then movement. Soil shifting, bubbles rising. Brooke screamed from inside the house. I ran in. Water poured down from the ceiling vents, as if the lake itself had found its way through the pipes. She stood in the living room, trembling, staring at the floor as small puddles spread across the wood. "Make it stop, Logan," she whispered. "Please." But deep down, I knew nothing human could stop it now. Truth had begun crawling upward through everything they buried, and justice had learned how to breathe underwater. The following morning, headlines hit the local paper. Victor Harlan found dead near Family Lake. No foul play suspected. But I knew better. Only 2 of his sons were still alive. The paper said no foul play, but the lake said otherwise. I could hear it the moment I stepped outside that morning. The air carried something alive. Not wind, not birds, just rhythm. A faint pulse, like breathing through water. Brooke wouldn't come near the porch anymore. She stayed inside, curtains drawn, whispering prayers that had no power left. Nathaniel called before noon. "We need to meet," he said. "Whatever you recorded, that's enough to shake this town. But we have to secure it first." I drove to his office. It was raining again, hard, the kind that soaks through skin and memory both. The whole drive, my headlights kept catching glimpses of the lake through the trees, water moving in strange waves against the wind's direction. When I arrived, Nathaniel already had files spread across his desk. Receipts, land deeds, insurance copies, all showing Victor's name looping through everything. He pointed at a line near the bottom of one document. "See here? That's the clause that made them rich. Every death in the bloodline, every accident, every payout routed through Victor's accounts. He built his empire out of tragedy. It wasn't just your boys. Others before them too. Quiet deaths, paid benefits, no questions." I felt sick. "How many?" He looked down, voice low. 7. In 20 years. All ruled accidental. The walls of that small office suddenly felt closer, hotter. On one wall hung a photo of this town decades ago. The same lake shimmering in the background, harmless then. Nathaniel followed my gaze. "Places remember," he said. "Evil doesn't wash off. It waits." He gave me a flash drive. "This is everything. Keep it hidden. You'll need it when you're ready to make it public." Just as he said it, thunder cracked so loud the floor shook. Lights flickered, then held steady again. "You hear that?" he asked. "Like the ground shaking before justice breaks loose." As I drove back, the rain cleared suddenly, too sudden. The clouds opened, but the lake still rippled, restless under sunlight. At the shoreline, I could see fishermen staring toward the middle, murmuring. Something was floating out there again. Not a log, not trash, a body. By the time sheriff's trucks arrived, people were already whispering one of the Harlan boys. The corpse had surfaced face down, waterlogged, drifted straight toward Victor's pier like it knew its path. The sheriff called it nature finding balance, though he didn't say it out loud. I watched him order his men to avoid photographs, to clear everyone. He caught me watching and warned. "If you keep showing up here, Logan, folks are going to start asking what you got to do with all this." I stared right back. "Ask them. Maybe they'll finally see." That night, Brooke tried to leave again, suitcase half open, shaking hands, eyes wide and wet. "I can't stay here," she said. "They won't stop until we're both gone. You don't understand what that lake holds now." "It holds truth," I said. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. "It holds memory. There's a difference." I let her go, watched her taillights vanish into the woods. For the first time, I didn't chase. I didn't even feel loss, just certainty. The weight on my chest had changed shape. Not grief, not anger, but purpose. The silence felt clean. Midnight came. I sat with the recorder, replaying Victor's last words. Not the scream, not the ending, just that one line he said before panic took him. "You made it follow us." I played it again and again until the static warped. A crash interrupted, glass upstairs. I rushed up, flashlight trembling in my hand. My twins' room. Windows wide open, curtains flapping in the cold. On the floor, soaked footprints, small, side by side, leading from the sill to their beds. and resting on one pillow, the bracelet I'd locked away days earlier. I sank to my knees, shaking, whispering their names even though my throat barely allowed sound. The air was cold enough that my breath clouded. Still, a warmth brushed my shoulder, light, brief, like two tiny hands. "Daddy." The sound didn't come from the air. It came from inside me, the voice I hadn't heard since that morning by the shore. When I looked up, the footprints were gone, but the bracelet remained, gleaming faintly like moonlight trapped in silver. I understood then what the water was doing. It wasn't killing, it was balancing, claiming back guilt, returning proof. The next day, Nathaniel called again, voice urgent. "I've got something new. You need to hear it in person." I drove up to his Hill office at dusk. Only his car parked outside, door half open. Inside, lights were on, radio humming static. Papers scattered, chair overturned. On the desk, my recorder, playing by itself. My own voice looped through it again and again. "You made it follow us. You made it follow us," until the batteries died. And under the desk, footprints again, small, wet, clean as if a child had walked barefoot through ash. They led straight toward the back door, open to the wind. Nathaniel wasn't there. Hours passed before they pulled his body from the same lake. He had no wounds, no water in his lungs. They said he'd simply stopped breathing, eyes open, lips blue, as if frozen in prayer. By morning, every newspaper printed his name under the headline "Third Death Linked to Harlan Family Investigation." I sat by the dock that night, watching moonlight bend over ripples. I didn't cry this time. I spoke quietly. "You're doing what I couldn't, aren't you? You're finding justice where men only found excuses." Across the water, lights flickered from Victor's house, windows opening and closing, shapes moving like shadows unsure of form. I knew who was left now, Grant and Kyle. The youngest two, the quiet ones. The lake waited. So did I. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, a scream ripped through the woods, carried across the water sharp enough to cut the air. Another followed, then silence again. I didn't move. Didn't need to. I knew what the silence meant now. It was mercy. It was truth settling. By dawn, people found footprints along the pier, 5 sets side by side, leading out from the shore into the water, none returning. Brooke came back hours later. Her face was pale, her hair damp like she'd walked through rain that hadn't fallen. She looked right at me and said, "They're all gone. You did it." I shook my head. "No, Brooke. The lake did." Her jaw trembled. "Then what's left for us?" "Whatever's left after truth," I said. The sun rose high that morning, clean and cruel. For the first time since the twins died, the water wasn't gray. It was clear, clear enough that I could see faint shapes beneath, drifting in stillness like they'd finally stopped fighting. I took the bracelet and threw it into the center. Not to bury memory, but to thank it. Behind me, Brooke whispered, "Please, don't go near it again." I didn't answer. The lake didn't need words anymore. It understood everything. The town called it a curse, but I called it balance. After Grant and Kyle vanished, silence swept through the whole county like a warning carried on wind. Nobody went near the lake after dark. Fishermen stopped coming. Children crossed streets just to avoid walking parallel to the shore. You could feel it, the water watching, remembering. I stayed because leaving didn't matter anymore. Every road out circled back to the same banks, the same reflections. The house near the hill was quiet again. Brooke barely spoke now. Her eyes had lost color. Her voice stuck between prayer and shame. The sheriff came just once that week. He stood by his cruiser, arms crossed. "Town thinks you had something to do with what's happening," he said, tone halfway between pity and threat. I answered, "And do you think the water listens to me?" He didn't reply. His glance lingered on the lake before he muttered, "You should stay inside at night," then drove off fast, like he didn't trust the road behind him. That evening, fog started rising early. The sky hadn't even darkened, but the surface turned silver, ripples spreading from no wind at all. I walked to the dock. Boards creaked old complaints under my boots. The air was heavy, not storm-heavy, deeper, full of memory. When the mist thickened, I thought I saw movement, two small figures at the waterline. My chest locked. Then, as it cleared, a toy boat surfaced, wooden, hand-painted, spinning in circles. It was theirs, the one I carved last summer, the one that vanished the day they drowned. Its paint hadn't faded. Its name scratched across the bottom, E&C, still bright, as if newly drawn. I knelt, reached into the cold surface, and the moment my fingers touched the hull, water pulsed, not a wave, a heartbeat. A voice followed, not sound exactly, more like thought pressed into air. "Daddy, you found us." I dropped the boat, stumbled backward, gasping. The lake calmed instantly. The toy floated away, drifting toward the deeper middle where fog thickened like a curtain being pulled shut. Later, inside, Brooke was staring through the window. "They're not at peace," she murmured. "You think this is justice, but it's only the beginning." I turned on her, drained. "Then tell me how to end it." She just whispered, "You already did. The day you started calling their names by the water." Her words hung there. I hadn't realized how many nights I'd whispered to the lake, begging for answers. Maybe the echoes became something more. Maybe grief itself grew shape. Next night, thunder rolled again. I couldn't sleep, kept seeing that toy boat spin in circles behind my eyelids. Around midnight, headlights appeared outside, just flashing once, then gone. Moments later, a knock, short, sharp, uneven. I opened the door. A young deputy I barely knew stood drenched, breathing hard. "You need to come with me," he said. "There's been another thing." He wouldn't say body. We drove the rough trail until the trees opened to that familiar stretch of dock. Rain hammered sideways, wind tearing through branches, but the lake itself was calm, too calm. Then the beam of his flashlight caught it, something floating near the bend of the pier. A shape, not human anymore, bloated, pale. One of Victor's boys, unrecognizable except for a signet ring glinting from a half-open hand. The deputy swore softly. We didn't touch him. He just rose. He switched off his light like it would make it disappear, then asked, "You think this place?" I stopped him. "Don't finish that. It hears you." He stared at me like I wasn't entirely wrong. After a moment he said, "River currents can't push bodies upstream toward the same dock. That's not current. That's intention." His voice cracked before he turned back toward the car. They left the body floating. Nobody wanted to be the one to pull it out. That wasn't an isolated night. Each dawn, fog revealed new evidence. A glove, a shoe, a chain. Always something belonging to the dead resurfacing clean and untouched, as if polished by unseen hands. The story spread beyond county lines now. Reporters arrived. They wrote about the haunted delta, the revenant water. None stayed after dark. Not one. Inside, Brooke had turned quiet but alert, watching corners like something invisible lived between walls. Once, she whispered, "They visit here too. They walk the hallway at night. I hear the floor creak in pairs." She was right. I'd heard it too. Two small steps at once, soft as breaths. But it didn't scare me anymore. Somehow it comforted me. My sons weren't gone. They were finally seen. One night, I woke to lights spilling under the bedroom door, blue and wavering, like reflections off water. Brooke was sobbing. When I stepped into the hall, the air smelled like rain even though the roof was dry. Downstairs, puddles shimmered near the door, and in them, fresh mud prints, child-sized, leading out toward the yard. I followed. The prints stopped where grass met water. The toy boat floated nearby again, circling in the moonlight. Beneath its glow, something else rose, not fully, just enough for outlines. 5 adult shapes drifting side by side, faces turned upward, eyes open but washed pale. I whispered, "It's done." For the first time, the water didn't ripple. It almost smiled. Then every shape sank together, slow and peaceful, leaving only the sound of quiet rain starting again. When dawn came, a letter slid under the door. No name, just ink bleeding through the envelope. Inside, typed words, Case reopened. Stay available for testimony. Below the stamp, Sheriff's Office. They finally believed. Brooke looked at the letter and asked, "What are you going to say?" "That truth floats," I said, "even when people don't." She tried to smile, but tears blurred it. If truth floats, does guilt? I looked toward the lake. Mirrors of clouds moving slow across it. No, guilt sinks. Always. That evening, I placed 2 candles in small glass jars. Lit them. Let them drift from the dock's edge. They moved side by side, tiny twin flames on the surface, not sinking, not parting, gliding until fog swallowed them. From that moment, I never saw ripples again. The lake had what it came for. The ghosts had what they were owed. And I, at last, had quiet. The quiet didn't last. It never does in a town built on buried truth. For a few days, the lake stayed still, like sleep after confession. Even the air felt clean again. But peace in places like this is a lie. It's only the pause before another sound. 3 nights after the bodies settled, church bells rang without a name to mourn. I stood by the window, watching rain roll down the glass in straight lines, thinking I could almost hear a giggle between the drops. Not childish exactly. Mocking, distant, as if someone remembered laughter that never belonged here. At first I thought it was the wind. Then, as thunder passed, I heard engines in the distance. By the time I stepped onto the porch, headlights were cutting through the trees again. Early morning trucks, men I didn't recognize, driving straight toward the lake. Reporters. A full television crew. They set up near the pier before the fog even broke. I watched one camera crew unpack their gear, joking loud to hide their nerves. One of them shouted, "If ghosts show up, at least we'll go viral," and the others laughed like boys at a bonfire. They didn't stay laughing long. By sunset, only one of those trucks drove back out. The rest left their cameras behind, lenses cracked, batteries drained. No statements, no explanation. Just gone. The sheriff showed up hours later with new men from the county. Their flashlights swept over the surface, the same useless pattern. Bright, dim, disappear. Finally he muttered, "I told them not to mess with this place," then looked right at me. "You happy now, Logan? Ghost stories and empty houses. That what you wanted?" I didn't answer. I just turned my gaze toward the lake. The water rippled once, like acknowledgement. Brooke barely left the couch anymore. She'd stopped crying, stopped praying. She just stared into the middle of nothing, rocking slightly. "They keep whispering," she said one night, voice barely a shred of itself. "They're not angry. They just want us to remember." I asked, "Remember what?" "That nothing stays buried if love ever touched it," she said. After that conversation, I started writing. Everything. The dates, the lies, Victor's empire, the way the lake seemed to breathe when guilt drew close. I left the pages stacked on the desk. No title, because truth didn't need one. But the lake wasn't done. The first sign came Thursday night when the church caught fire. Not the whole building. Just the tower, the bell snapping free before dawn like the sky itself gave up listening. The preacher said lightning, but there was no storm. And under the broken beam, they found a ring, Victor's wedding band, the same one he was buried with. Nobody said a word to me about it, yet the sheriff's truck idled outside my drive all morning. That same day, Brooke disappeared again. Her suitcase was gone, her coat too. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd finally made it out, away from everything. But by dusk, word spread she'd been seen by the lake, standing ankle-deep in the shallows, eyes open, lips moving like prayer, then walking straight in until fog hit her. They didn't find her body. Not that day, not the next. I didn't break down this time. She'd made her choice long before the water did. Instead, I drove to Nathaniel's office, empty, dusty, still bearing the faint smell of his last candle. Files locked up, flash drive waiting where he used to keep spare keys. I took it and made copies. I mailed one to every newspaper address I could find. Whatever came next wouldn't drown silently again. That night, the phone started ringing from numbers I didn't know. Journalists, lawmen from outside counties, even strangers claiming dreams of the lake, of 5 shadows rising and a man standing between them. I said nothing. By midnight, the fog had come back thicker than ever, rolling through the streets, swallowing entire lampposts. From inside the house, I could see nothing beyond the porch light. But I could hear people shouting down by the water, search parties calling names again. One of them yelled Brooke's name. Then came screams. I grabbed my coat and ran down. The path was soaked, slick, cold. I reached the pier just as one flashlight hit the surface. A body floating face up, pale in moonlight. Not Brooke. Sheriff. He looked peaceful, which made it worse. Behind him, more shapes moved under the fog. Too many to count, slow and deliberate. The search party backed away, stumbling, dropping lights like broken halos. People started praying out loud, others screaming about devils in the water. But I could see clearer than any of them. There weren't devils there. There were 5 men, calm, standing waist-deep, eyes empty, each turning his head in the same rhythm. The lake was parading guilt for everyone to see. Before the last flashlight blinked out, one of them, the one in front, lifted an arm, pointing toward shore. Straight at me. Then they all vanished beneath the surface. By morning, news vans were gone. Sheriff's truck sat half-drowned at the pier. No one came near that area again. For the first time, even the air lost its echo. No birds, no crickets. The calm had come back, but it wasn't peace. It was submission. The town stopped pretending it could outlast its own sins. I spent that whole day cleaning the house. I packed nothing, burned what needed burning. By evening, I sat at the table and listened to the world fall quiet again. As night rose, there was a knock at the door. Soft, measured. Not thunder, not wind. I opened it anyway. Brooke stood there dripping, clothes clinging to her, eyes half alive. She didn't cross the threshold, just said one thing. They forgave me. Then she smiled. A tiny, tired thing, and the fog pulled her away again before I could even move. The water outside went still, clear as glass. For the first time in months, I saw stars reflected steady, not distorted. Maybe that was forgiveness. Maybe it was the end. The stars only lasted one night. By morning, clouds swallowed the sky again, and the storm rolled back over the hills as if peace had been a rumor. The wind dragged through the grass, carrying that same faint smell, wet earth and something older. I walked out to the porch where water dripped from the roof in thick rhythm. The lake shimmered behind the fog, quiet, almost polite. But it never stayed polite for long. The sheriff was gone. The town meeting stopped. No church services, no press. Just silence, broken by thunder. Every store kept its door locked, and even the radio stations stopped mentioning the name Harlan. Only I kept the lake company now, and I think it liked it that way. 2 days passed before anyone else dared to come up the dirt road. It was Victor's widow, Eliza. Her hair was undone, and her eyes were red like she hadn't slept in weeks. She stepped out of her car holding an envelope tight in her hands. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked, voice raw. I didn't answer. She slammed the envelope against my chest. "You broke this family. You made monsters of us." I looked straight at her. "I didn't make them. I just stopped hiding them." Her voice cracked. "Victor was a sinner, but he still prayed for forgiveness. You brought a curse on all our blood." I took the envelope silently, but she was already walking away when I asked, "Is there anyone left?" She stopped, didn't turn around. No one worth saving. Then got back in her car and drove off, wheels spinning mud like ash. Inside the envelope sat 2 things, one small photo and one folded will. The picture showed my twins sitting in Victor's office, smiling, unaware a camera watched from the corner. Date stamp, 1 week before the drowning. The will left everything, land, buildings, insurance, to Victor's sons and Brooke, collectively. Signed 3 days before the accident. So it had been written before their deaths. Meaning they knew exactly what they'd lose, what they'd gain. Meaning none of them ever planned to let me live with the truth. When night came again, the rain finally gave up. The smell of pine filled the air, clean for once. I walked to the water's edge with the envelope in hand and tossed it in. The paper floated only a second before sinking, swallowed whole. Nothing floats here now unless it's supposed to. I turned to leave, but something about the sound behind me made me pause. Ripples in perfect circles. Then from the center of the lake came a glow, faint, pale, drifting like a lantern under the surface. Out of the glow, Victor rose. His eyes were white, his hands open. The water flowed through him as though he weren't solid at all. He didn't speak, but the message pressed straight into my chest. I was wrong. Behind him, the shadows of his 5 sons moved slowly, forming a line before fading into the light again. Victor inclined his head once toward me, lower than a bow, higher than surrender, then vanished back under without a single ripple. I stood there long after the glow dimmed, until wind finally moved the reeds again. The following day brought 2 strangers to my door. County investigators from the city, men in new jackets with old eyes. They said they were here to make sense of things. One flipped through his notepad. "You've lost a lot of people, Mr. Parker." "Loss isn't the right word," I said. "Debt got collected." The taller one studied the mud around the porch. "You burned something here recently?" "Every lie I could find," I said. They exchanged looks but didn't comment. Then the first one sighed. "You'll need to come with us to identify a body." "Female." I froze. "Where?" "By the North Bend." Lake took her, then offered her back. They brought me to the familiar dock. Fog still slept low. A white tarp covered the stretcher. Brooke, her hair tangled with weeds, her hands almost peaceful, like folded apology. Around her fingers twined 2 little bracelets, one hers, one theirs. The bit of chain connected all 3 together. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "You finally came home." One of the agents asked, "You know why she's holding them?" "I think," I said. "Because the water forgave her before I could. They drove me back, said officials would close this case permanently once everything was processed. But deep down I knew this case didn't belong to them. It never did." That night, wind howled off the lake again, but it sounded different, softer, almost warm. I sat by the window with candlelight trembling against glass. Something moved outside, a reflection maybe, or memory. 2 small shadows paused by the dock and looked toward the porch. I knew those heights, those shapes. Ethan and Caleb. They didn't wave. They just stood quietly, as if to say they were never gone, as if to show me peace hadn't drowned with them. And then, behind them, other figures stood forming a half circle, familiar faces of all who'd paid the price. For once, nobody seemed angry. They only watched until fog covered them again. The next morning, the air smelled of pine and rain and nothing else. The case closed on paper, but everyone in town woke early without knowing why, walking outside to see the same sight. The entire surface of the lake reflecting sunlight perfectly still, and in the middle, 5 white lilies floating in a perfect arc. People said I placed them there. Others said the water grew them overnight. I didn't explain. Let them think what they wanted. Justice doesn't need belief. As I stood at the lake's edge one last time, candle jar in hand, I whispered, "The water remembers truth, not faith." And I let the flame drift out one final time. This time it didn't sink. It sailed across, slow and steady, until the world turned gold again behind morning clouds. Morning arrived like an apology the sky wasn't brave enough to say. For the first time since everything began, the lake looked calm. Not clean, not innocent, just calm, the way guilt looks when it's finally tired. I sat on the porch with a cup of black coffee that had gone cold long before I took the first sip. Across the yard, mist rolled slow across the water, the same kind that always came before something new surfaced. I waited, not for death this time, for understanding. Maybe grief teaches you to listen quietly, to what hides between raindrops and wind. That day, the lake started talking different. Not with ripples, not with shapes, through memory. It started as faint flashes, like old film burned into the back of my eyelids. The night of the drowning came back in pieces, sounds first, then faces. My twins' voices laughing, Dominic's voice calling them over, fake gentle. Come on, boys, let's show you something cool. The cousins standing in a half-circle near the dock, telling them not to tell Dad. It's a secret. Then the splash. Then screams. Then cheering. My chest locked up. The flashes bled into newer scenes. The bonfire on their land. The blanket set on fire. Brooke crying in the bathroom while Dominic texted her. It's done. But then everything shifted again, showing things I never saw. Victor watching from the shadows. Eliza begging him to stop. Dominic laughing, calling it correction. The lake was showing me everything it had swallowed whole. Every sin hidden under its mirror. When I snapped awake, it was still dawn, fog thick, sweat cold on my skin. I walked to the water's edge, whispering, "You don't need to show me again." I know, but it wasn't finished yet. A figure stood knee-deep out where the pier vanished into mist. A man's outline, soaked, jaw tight, eyes hollow. Dominic. He didn't move closer, just stared like a reflection that learned to breathe. "You wanted truth," he said without sound, his voice in my head, not my ears. I nodded slowly. "Then see it whole," he pressed, and suddenly the ground under me wasn't ground anymore. I was back there, the night before it happened. The party at Victor's barn. Dominic pacing the floor, muttering about teaching Logan humility. His brothers drunk enough to cheer him on. Brooke standing by the back door, crying into her hands, whispering, "Please don't do it." Dominic shoving her away. "You had your chance to leave him. You're in this now." He'd always wanted what I had. The respect, the quiet, the life that looked better than the mess inside him. Maybe he thought killing my children would take that back. The flash faded, and I was standing in the wet clay again, breathing like I'd run miles. Dominic still watched, water lapping around his chest now. "You think this lake is your revenge," he whispered, "but it's my sentence." Then his body started sinking. Not dragged, not drowning, just fading like fog. As he went under, his voice whispered one last time, "It knows who asked first." And with that, the water sealed itself. I stumbled back, barely breathing. The phrase echoed, "It knows who asked first." Had I wished for this? All those nights begging for justice, whispering for truth. Was that the key that unlocked it? I went back inside, sat by the kitchen table surrounded by soaked footprints that weren't mine. The house creaked softly, settling around me like an exhausted animal. For a long while, I just listened to nothing. Then a knock cut through the quiet. One sharp sound. Then again. When I opened the door, a woman stood there in a dark coat, rain dripping from her hat. Some new investigator, city accent, voice too careful. "Mr. Parker? I'm Agent Harris. I'm here to discuss she hesitated, searching for a word she didn't believe, the incidents." Behind her, the lake glimmered through fog like a sleeping eye. I let her in. She asked questions that sounded rehearsed. What time did the drownings happen? Who had access to the properties? What did I witness? I gave her the same truth I gave everyone. The lake remembers. She scribbled the words into her notebook like quoting madness. Before she left, she asked something different. "Do you think they found peace?" I looked past her shoulder toward the water. "Peace isn't found," I said. "It's earned. And some of them didn't pay enough." She nodded slowly, then slipped a card in my hand. "If you see or hear anything else, call me." That night, I couldn't sleep again. The house hummed like it always did before something new surfaced. Near midnight, thunder cracked, shaking the window panes. I went outside barefoot, flashlight in hand. At the shoreline, something floated again, an earring, gold, familiar. Brooks, the same she wore the week she vanished. And wrapped around it, sealed by a knot of lake weeds, was Dominic's lighter. The flame chamber filled with water, but still reflecting a faint glint of fire when lightning flashed. The lake had tied them together, a confession of its own. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was justice turning into peace. I sat there until birds started calling again and early light bent over the horizon. Everything looked different now, muted, Normal, almost healed. The air smelled of wet wood instead of rot. I knew then it was ending. This long conversation between me and the water. I'd seen enough ghosts for one lifetime. I stood, whispered to the ripples, no more. The lake stayed silent, as if agreeing. When I turned to go back inside, the toy boat was waiting by the steps again, perfectly dry. Dawn came colder than usual that morning, the kind of cold that didn't belong to weather. I had left the earring and the lighter on the porch table, side by side. Two tiny artifacts that breathed the weight of everything lost. When I stepped out, light skimmed their metal edges, glinting like the water itself was watching through them. Agent Harris returned at sunrise. Her face looked older after just one night here. She said, "Bodies keep surfacing. Your uncle's name's all over their records. We're reopening everything, Logan." Something in her tone sounded less official now, almost personal, like she believed. She placed a folder on my table, pages heavy with photographs, old reports stamped closed. "This ends now," she said quietly. "You'll testify to what you saw, what you know. Let the system do its work." I nearly laughed. The system? She didn't flinch. The system didn't kill those men, did it? The words landed somewhere deep. For the first time, someone said it out loud without accusation, just truth. By noon, we were driving to the courthouse. The town looked half abandoned, half awake, windows boarded, signs gone dull, faces turning toward us like they hadn't seen sunlight in months. Outside the courthouse gates, reporters waited again, but quieter now, their lenses lowered in the rain. Inside, the air was dense with hush. Nathaniel's old papers had become the foundation of the case. Every missing document, every forged policy now had light on it. Victor's name appeared again and again, payouts, cover-ups, signatures reaching deep into county offices. The sheriff's stamps everywhere. When the hearing began, I sat behind the witness table with hands clasped to stop the shake. The judge, gray-haired and weary, asked for facts. Agent Harris moved through evidence with quiet precision. Photographs, timelines, recorded voices, Victor's confession ending in static. Then she pressed play. The courtroom filled with that sound I'd memorized. Victor's voice cracking right before the water took him. "You made it follow us." The room went still like they thought the sound itself might bleed into the walls. She paused, said, "That's not threat. That's resignation." Then she played my voice whispering after, at the dock. I didn't have to. You could feel everyone in the room realize what that meant, that no one standing here truly understood what had happened out there, but they all felt its shape pressing against reason. The prosecutor asked if I believed there was human conspiracy or something else deeper. I said both. People built the lie. The water decided the punishment. Some scoffed quietly, others didn't move. The judge just stared at me a long time, as if measuring truth by silence, then nodded. "Sometimes law and consequence aren't the same thing," he said. "But today they will meet halfway." When testimony ended, the room stayed motionless. The verdict wasn't sentences or appeals, it was acknowledgement. Records reopened, charges filed posthumously, land titles stripped, properties seized. The Harlan legacy ended in black ink and shaking hands. After court adjourned, Harris found me on the steps outside. "You know, there's no precedent for half the things you just said in there," she told me. "Maybe there's not supposed to be," I said. She smiled faintly. "Then what happens now?" "Now." I looked past her toward the hills, where fog already rolled back toward the lake. Now the lake gets quiet again. That night, the town gathered by accident, people walking without planning, drawn by the same pull, all ending up at the shoreline. No music, no prayer, just presence. The moon climbed behind mist, and the lake looked silver again, too calm, almost holy. Then bubbles rose near the middle, small at first, then wide, spreading like breath. From where I stood, the reflection broke into shapes, dozens, maybe more, faces faint and peaceful. Not monsters, not ghosts. Witnesses. The crowd backed away slowly, afraid yet reverent. The wind hushed, and a man's voice whispered through the reeds. It wasn't any single language, just meaning that everyone somehow understood. Truth will always return. The lake stilled again, and silence folded over everyone. For the first time in years, it felt final. I turned to leave and found Brooke's candle jar sitting by the pier post, untouched by rain. Its flames steadied despite the wind. I picked it up, lifted it to the water. Hit like, subscribe for more. No, that wasn't the tone anymore. This was different. I whispered, "You're free now? All of you." Behind me, the crowd was still watching the waves flatten to glass, the air heavy with relief instead of terror. Some people wept quietly. Agent Harris nodded once and backed away, finally content to let the place claim its silence again. By morning, the courthouse announced closure. Case resolved by act of nature and man combined. Strange wording, but it fit. When I returned home, dawn spread pale gold over everything. The lake mirrored the sky so perfectly it looked bottomless. For the first time, I saw nothing below, no shadows, no bodies, no movement. Just reflection. I stood there for a long time, whispering names, one at a time. Ethan, Caleb, Brooke, Nathaniel, even Victor, letting the air know each of them. And as the first wind rippled across the lake, I heard faint laughter, not cruel, not mocking, just free. Morning came soft, the kind that doesn't ask for forgiveness anymore. The lake shimmered with sunlight like glass spread flat across the world. No ripples, no breeze, no ghosts, just peace that felt earned. For once, I didn't carry the heaviness of memory when I stepped outside. The ground was dry, birds had returned, and even the porch would seem to breathe quieter. When I looked at the water, I didn't see reflections of the past, only two soft rings expanding near the shore, as if small hands still liked to play beneath the surface. I walked down to the dock with the candle jar still in my hand, the same one that never burned out, the last piece Brooke left behind. I set it beside my feet and waited, letting the wind take its time. The town had learned to live again. They'd stopped calling it cursed. People fished near the banks once more, and children rode bikes along the path, their laughter washing away what noise grief used to make. Justice had never felt loud. It came as silence, as balance. And it had finally stayed. Agent Harris had driven back to the city last week. Before leaving, she said I could testify for closure if I wanted, but I just smiled. Some truths don't belong in rooms, I told her. She shook my hand and never asked again. Now it was just me and the water. I took a breath and spoke softly. Ethan, Caleb, you can rest now. The world remembers your names properly. A breeze passed through the reeds, and the candle flame tilted, not out, just sideways, like a nod. I sat there until the sky turned gold again and felt every sound fade into the distance. Somewhere far within the lake, light glimmered. 5 shadows drifted together briefly, then vanished into calm. No fear, no struggle, only quiet acknowledgement. Some called what happened here vengeance. Some called it haunting. But I think it was something else entirely. A father's love refusing to stay buried. A lake that refused to forget. A balance too deep for courts or stories to measure. Now they call me Delta Dad, the name whispered like legend. But I'm no legend. I'm just a man who listened long enough for truth to answer back. The sun slipped behind clouds one last time before dusk, painting everything silver. I picked up the candle again, set it afloat, and watched it drift, steady as memory itself. Before I turned to leave, I looked straight into the camera of my own life, or maybe yours, and said quietly, "Tell me something after all this. Do you believe that justice ever sleeps?" If you felt this story deeply, if it pulled you somewhere quiet inside, be sure to like this video to keep these real and raw stories alive. Subscribe so you don't miss the next thriller, another epic revenge tale that might just stay with you long after it ends. And I truly want to know, from wherever you're watching, Pakistan, America, India, or anywhere across the world, what kind of stories speak to your heart the most? What kind of betrayal, truth, or redemption do you want me to tell next? Share it in the comments, because the next story will rise from what you ask for. Until then, take care of your loved ones, guard your truth, and I'll see you in the next one. The candle reached the middle of the lake, flames still flickering, refusing to die.